So I think I know everybody here. My name is Roy Milton, and we are going to be recording this for a couple of folks that may not be able to make it for this session, but are interested in going through the assessment of indicators and what some of that means. What we're going to be talking about today is the 4 quadrants that is called DISC. D is for dominant, I is for influencing, S is for steady, and C is for compliant. I think all the students here got your reports back. Is there anything that y'all saw in those reports that didn't seem like you? Was there anything that stood out, or did you say, well, this is a pretty good assessment of who I am? Okay, all right. What was one of the things that were a little off? I know I was talking to Jesse Cieslak, and he was saying that he doesn't like flattery, and that was one of the things in his assessment. But everything else was good. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. These are not to put you in a box. We all operate in different categories based upon our environment and based upon who we are. But there's a tendency, there's a natural profile that we have. And so that's kind of what the report was trying to show you, is what the natural profile is. So we'll talk through some of that. And so let me go on to the next slide here. Okay. Well, did it freeze up on me? There we go. Okay, so we're going to learn about yourself and others. Why would that be important? Why is it important to learn about yourself and others? Any thoughts? To connect with others. Communication is what we're really talking about here, and how we communicate. And if we know how we are wired, and we know how somebody else is wired, or at least there's tendencies and there's issues, then we might be able to connect with them better if we understand that. We're all different. Discover how God made you. To me, that's one of the neat things about this, is to see that there are different profiles and there are different ways of looking at human behavior. We'll take a look at some of those. Look at your strengths, your personality types, and then how to improve communication, just like Sarah was saying, is to go off and look at those. Okay, so Terry, would you hand out those little worksheets? We have one assessment that we want everybody to take, and it's to kind of give a high level, it's an assessment going through, and what you're looking for is all of the numbers.
But they're not supposed to look at that, right?
Well, yeah, just hand it out. Don't start yet.
Put it under your paper then.
You want adults to do it?
Huh? All adults too. Yeah, we're going to have competition between the adults and the students. Okay? Josh, there's a place right over here. Awesome.
Oh, why are we?
Okay. Just we're not doing anything right now. Cover it up, Paul. Okay. Okay, and just to let everybody know, we are recording this today. There is a couple of families that are not able to make it, and so I told them that I would record and try to get it out there to them. So, okay. So we got a few more to go. Okay, so what we want you to do is we want you to go through the pattern up here, and we want you to circle the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to get started and to see how many numbers you can go, okay?
In order?
In order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on your mark, get set, go.
What do we do when we're done?
I don't think that's going to happen, Brian, even for you.
What are you serving?
How's it go? Keep going, right?
Keep going, keep going. Yeah, circle as many as you got. You probably got about 15 seconds left. Maybe a little longer. Oh man, I hear a lot of pins hitting the table. That is so cool. Okay, this is 1 minute. Go at 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pins down. All right. Okay. Who got 10 or higher? Okay, 10 or higher. How many got 15 or higher? Okay, how many got 20 or higher?
What?
Wow. Okay, how about 25?
What?
How about,
He has done this before.
how about 30?
Oh, Brian.
Okay, have you done this before, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay,
41.
Okay, so Brian's excluded. All right, so now what I want to show you is that, that's awesome that Brian got over 35, right? But there is a pattern into this table, right? And if you will draw a line, there's two little tick marks on either side of your paper. So you can flip your paper over now, okay? And there's a tick mark at the halfway mark here and a tick mark on the halfway point there. Does everybody see that? So draw those out on your table. And then you see the 1 is up in the upper left-hand side, right? Number 2, if it goes, okay, number 2, and then 3, number 4. Where's number 5 going to be? It's the same one as number 1, right? Okay, so that's the pattern that this has. So you can see that instead of looking at the entire sheet and trying to find all the numbers on the entire sheet, you have a smaller area to go research, right? So now we're going to do the same exercise again, but this time you have a pattern to go with. You have a little bit more instruction. So when you mark, get set, go. $20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, pins down. All right. So let's start all over again. How many got 15 or greater? Okay. How about 20? 25? 30? Brian was the only one to get 30 last time or higher. And now look at the room. So what does this little exercise tell you?
Brian knew the answers beforehand.
But y'all didn't know the answers beforehand.
It helps me know the trick.
To learn the trick
Or the pattern.
or the pattern. Patterns are important in life, right? And so I got another question from a pattern standpoint. What are these?
Animal patterns.
Okay, what is this one right up here?
Tiger.
A tiger. What is this one? A Dalmatian. What is this?
Zebra. Giraffe.
How do you know that?
They're recognizable.
They're recognizable. And so, you know, just like animals are, the patterns are predictable, God has made us in certain ways. And that's one of the things that this whole DISC assessment is to really help and to show, is that we are different. Each one of us has a different thumbprint, right? Each one of us is unique. And that's one of the things we want to look at. But even though, whoops, let me go back here. I don't know how to do it other than to go back this way. So even though we are all different, we are predictably different. Okay, so each one of us is unique. Each one of us has strengths and obstacles to come over, right? But if we can understand who we are at a higher level, then that will help us to communicate and how to understand patterns and how to be more effective. So, this is not always going how it's supposed to go. Okay. So, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. What does that Bible verse tell us about who we are?
God made us.
God made us a certain way. I praise, right? When we see how God has wired us and how God has made us, it causes us to praise Him because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are unique. Each one of you are different. Each one of you are gifted. And understanding who you are, I believe, gives you better insight to your relationship with God. And so that's one of the things, the reasons that I got into this DISC a little bit, and it's something that I'm kind of doing on the side. So you are the guinea pig class. This is the first time we've gone through this. But if it's beneficial, if it's something that you like, now, Bethany, you've gone through this, and you had said, Melinda, that you have gone through some DISC assessments. If it's something that is worthwhile, I'd like to know. Is it something that we should, offer to more, or not? But as we look at today, we're going to look at the DISC assessment. If you're a D or an I, who in here was a D or an I? Okay? Then that means you're more outgoing, right? You rarely meet a stranger. You're an extrovert. You like to be out in the crowd. If you're a C or an S, how many of you are C or S's? Okay? You usually are more reserved. You would prefer not to be in the crowd. It's not that you can't be in the crowd, it's just you have a preference that says, I get recharged by myself, right? If you're a D or a C, raise your hand. The predominant, D or C, okay? Those are more people who are task-oriented. They see the work to be done, they organize it in their head, they're planners. Terry is a planner. Before we go on a vacation, she knows where we're going to spend the night. She knows the days that we're going to be at certain locations, and I'm along for the ride because I'm an I, and I love being around people and I love interacting. But the planning part of that is not how I'm really wired. And then if you're an I or an S, you're more people oriented. So once again, these are general characteristics. And we, hopefully everyone had a chance to read through their report and they can kind of get an idea of where they are. But we're all different, and yet we're predictably different. And that's what this DISC assessment really helps us figure out. So, once again, it's not putting you in the box. that says I have to always act like this. Because as we'll see, if you think through history, and I mean, we are at church, so the answer pretty might be obvious. But who was a perfect D-I-C-N-S?
Jesus.
Jesus was, right? When he was talking to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, he was nailing them. He was saying, "You pit of vipers, you don't understand my word." He was very direct and bold. But when he was meeting with the woman at the well, he was very tenderhearted and soft-hearted, right? So in different scenarios, we do react differently, and that's okay. So it's not that you're in a box and you have to maintain that, but understanding the high level, this is kind of how I'm wired. Thomas, you're a C. You're a very analytical person. To be able to convince Thomas of something, you're going to have to show him the facts. He's not going to take, "Oh yeah, this is a good thing," and he's going to want to know, where did you get the information from? How was it validated? But someone else that is an I, they're more open to having degrees of freedom. It's not as constrained with data, right? Once again, it's just a different mindset of how we're wired. This human behavior has been going on for many years. I'm not even going to pronounce the first two names up there because I can't. But even before Christ was born, right? People have been figuring out behavior science in the human population. And the most recent we talked about before we started the meeting here is that Myers-Briggs, Carl Jung, back in 1921, started a processing of how people were wired, and that was thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. And then the DISC method came out in 1928, which is dominance, influencing, steadiness, and compliance. So it's been going on for a long time. There's a lot of studies that have been ongoing in the military, in businesses. A lot of them use this type of information to build teams and to see how managers, supervisors interact with their employees. So it's been something that's been out there for many years. So this next part is something that when it comes to what shapes our personality, one of the things that shapes our personality is our heredity. It's how we're born, right? It's the DNA that God gave us. Another area is our environment. I think statistically they say that by the time a child is 6 years old, they're pretty much, their mindset is pretty much framed at that point. Not that it can't be expanded, but there's a learning process that has already been established. And then the third one is role models. And all of these contribute to who we are. But what I would like to do, there's a few Bible verses that I would like for us to look at. Jeremiah 1:5. If you have Jeremiah 1:5, and this table, you were volunteered because you weren't here. So you have Bible verses in front of you, okay? So Jeremiah 1:5, who has that? Did you read that for us?
Yes. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart.
Amen. Okay? So God foreknew us before we were in the womb. I don't know how are we doing on time? 4:19. Okay. We got to be out of here 5 because youth happens and we need to be on time. Okay, so how about Psalms 139:14? Okay.
I will praise you.
Did I? Psalms 139:14. I think this is Sierra's. We'll come back to you because you do have it. You do have it. You do have it, but that's a different context. Okay.
I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well.
Okay. So what is that telling us about who we are? Are we important to God? We are. Extremely important. Okay, now there's an expansion of that, and that's Josiah, if you would read Psalms 139, 13 through 16.
For you formed my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and I know this very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my uniformed body. All my days were written in your book and ordained for me before one of them came to be.
So God knows you. He wants you to know him. And it's something that I know we know the Bible stories, right? We know the scriptures and things, but what my heart is that we learn to hear God, we learn to engage with him and see that he is molding us, he is shaping us for a purpose. So let's go to Psalms 139, and this is going to be a little bit more repetitive, but verses 139, 1 through 5. That should be on somebody's sheet. Okay, Thomas?
Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me.
Does that give you confidence to know that God knows you intimately, right? How about Psalms 139, 6 through 10?
Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot contain it. Where should I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there in your heart, your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me.
Wow. I mean, to me, it's amazing that the God of the universe knows me. And if I go to the highest mountain or the lowest valley, Sheol, right, hell, he is there. He's going to be with me. How about Psalms 139, 11 through 15?
I say, surely the darkness shall come over me, and the light about me by night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, the darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts and knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth.
Amen. Amen. God knows us. How about Psalms 139, 16 through 19, I believe? Okay.
Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awake, and I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God! O man of blood, depart from me.
Okay, and the last verse is 139, I think, 19 through 24.
This is 20 through 24?
Yeah.
Okay. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. I do not hate those who hate you, O Lord, and do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
God wants us to know who we are, to know that we were created, but we are to live for him, and for us to want him to search us, and to, when there are things in our life that are inconsistent with him, to ask him to help us resolve those. So God knows our every thought, our every word, our every move. God directs us, no matter where we go, highest mountain, lowest valley. God knows no hopelessness or helpless situation. God formed the complex details of our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. God constantly thinks of us and is concerned with the details of our life. God searches our heart and will purify our motives. That gives me a reassurance that it's not me who has to change. It's me who has to surrender, and God does the changing in us. Does that make sense? So with that kind of as a backdrop, we are wired from heredity. Our environment shapes us. The role models that we hang with, the books that we read, the videos that we watch, all of those things ultimately shapes our personality. So what we wanted to do now is just to kind of jump in and look at the D. The D is dominant. For those of you who raised your hand that were Ds, 3% of the population fits into this category, statistically. They're driven by authority, they take control, they like control, they embrace change that will help them get the results, they're comfortable being confrontational, and they treasure loyalty. The greatest fear that a D has is being taken advantage of. So if you're a D, sometimes you have a fearful side that says that I don't want people to take advantage of me. Some of the strengths of the D, and I have a handout as you go out. I'm going to give you this. It has a lot of this stuff in there. But the strengths are they are bold, confident, decisive, productive, strong-willed. Does that sound like any of the D's in here? And once again, there's a primary and then there's a secondary, right? So even though if you're an ID, you can still have a lot of these characteristics. Some of the obstacles or blind spots sometimes D's don't see is that they can be argumentative, they can be inconsiderate, opinionated, not complimentary, possessive, they don't apologize, insensitive, domineering, impatient, unforgiving. So these are tendencies. Once again, this morning Jesse and I were talking about his assessment, and he was saying that, some of the things he agreed with, but one he didn't was flattery. He didn't, flattery doesn't identify. And that's true. Not all of these are going to be necessarily D components, but generally speaking, they're a pretty good definition of a D. So the I's, 11% of the population are I's. These are the ones who love friendly environments. They're relational. They're emotional. You can see why I'm. They're great storytellers. They're encouragers. They treasure experiences with others. The greatest fear is rejection or loss of approval. Side note: I've worked for L3 Harris. Now I no longer do, as of last Thursday. But there was a situation that came up after 43 years working at this corporation, and I got offended about 6 months ago. I was really hurt. And after I took this assessment, it was the loss of approval and a rejection. It was like the light bulbs went off, and I felt this in my spirit that something was not right, but I really didn't understand why. But it was that particular fear was a button that somebody touched, and it really set me in a mindset that says, do I even want to be here anymore?
So why you retired?
And then I retired. Heck with them. Strength: persuasive, generous, charismatic, enthusiastic, friendly, talkative. I mean, there's a lot of positive things here. But once again, these are things that are generally the strengths of an I. Obstacles: undisciplined, undependable, disorganized. Terry would agree with that. appear to be a phony at times, distracted, impulsive. So, once again, there's blind spots that if you're an I, you need to kind of think through these. Forgetful, doesn't listen completely, right? Waste time, talk too much, okay? So these are things that I need, since I'm an I need to be attentive to these and saying, Lord, help me shore these areas up. Okay, it seems like you get hung up every now and then. There we go. And S, 69%, almost 70% of the population fits into this category. These are the people that you really want on your teams, and because they are the ones who are easygoing, they're agreeable, they're good listeners, they're compassionate, they love peaceful situations. The greatest fear of an S is the loss of security or confrontation. They hate confrontation. They'll do anything to protect that. The strengths, once again, hard worker, team player, stable, steady, secure, peaceful, great listeners, they're faithful, close friends. But some of the obstacles, they can be too laid back. They can resist change. I like it the way it is, so I don't want to move forward. They are a slower pace. They're a little harder to get started. They have a difficulty in saying no. Skeptical, indecisive, shut down during confrontations. So once again, these are general blind spots that an S category has. And the C, 17% of the population fit into the C category. This is one where they honor logic, facts, very analytical, they're conscientious, detail-oriented. Their greatest fear is for someone to criticize them. So once again, as we learn a little bit more about ourselves and about others, to help us communicate better and influence more. So the strengths of this is genius prone category. There you go, Thomas. But it's they're idealistic, high quality of work. It's going to be done right, or it's not going to be done at all. Persistent, serious, deep thinker. They gather facts. They're planners. So once again, these are the strengths of a C. They love rules, and they abide by those rules. Obstacles. They can be moody. They can be critical. Socially insecure, rigid, legalistic, overanalyze. So once again, when you see these blind spots, these are things that, you can say, this is who I am, but I want to be more open to these things and not as critical. So it takes more of an effort to work on some of these areas. So growth plans in these areas would be something that you would want to strive for. So this is a lot of words here, but basically what it says is that Jesus Christ was a perfect human. And at different times, he encountered different people, and the way he encountered those people is where those people needed to be encountered. So with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, he was hard. The woman at the well, he was soft. When he engaged with his disciples, there was more of the steadiness. So my heart is that we want to become more like Christ, who took the situation and utilized the skill to communicate with others, because that's the important part, is being able to communicate. John Maxwell wrote a book that says everyone communicates, few connects. And the way we connect is when we understand somebody and when we engage with them the way they need to be engaged with, and communicate with them in that way. That's what it is. Connecting increases your influence in every situation. And that's one of the things that I think my heart is we're here on earth for a purpose, and the purpose is to share the gospel. And the way we do that is we communicate with other people. So we really jumped that time. Let's see. Okay, so let's see if y'all know any of these guys. What a crew, huh? So why is it important for each one in this group? I mean, this happens to be Life Point Church. I asked Katie Robinson to give me some pictures, some recent pictures. There's a few that's a little older, but generally speaking, more recent. But what's the purpose of communication? It is to influence, to motivate, to express our feelings, and to provide information. It is the responsibility of the person who is communicating to try to ensure communication takes place and connection takes place. And the reason that we do this is we want the other person to understand where we're coming from and to be able to help them understand what we're trying to communicate. And so everyone's heard of the golden rule before, right? Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. But there's something called the platinum rule, and that is do unto others as they want to be communicated with. So if you're talking to an I, you have to give time. You have to give more space. If you're talking to a C, you have to give data. You have to give numbers. You have to give statistics. If you're talking to a D, they want the bullets. What's the bottom line? Just give me the exact things that I'm looking for. Don't tell me how to, boil the ocean. I just want to know, how to heat it up a little bit, right? I mean, high level stuff. And that's where communication takes place. And that's why it's important for us to understand who we are. Okay. Let's see if I just come down here. Lost there we go. Okay. How are we doing on time? 4:37. Okay, we got plenty of time. Good. Okay. Okay, so that's some of the things that we just went over with you. So, okay, so as we look through this, looking through communicating with a D. Be brief, direct, and to the point. And one of the things that is in the handout, and there's a couple of things here, when you're talking to a D, they don't have to take a test or an assessment to know that they're a D. If somebody comes up and wants to know specific information, or if they're domineering or direct or whatever, with understanding how people are wired, you can make some assumptions with that. And then if you sense that they are a D, then you would focus on how to communicate with them. Focus on the results, don't ramble, and then discuss the problem and the effect on the outcomes. So there's some very specific things. With an I, you have to let them talk a little bit, right? You have to engage. Don't ignore their ideas. Allow time for socializing. I like the fourth bullet there, or fifth bullet. 4 short 10-minute discussions is better than 1 40-minute discussion. Give them time to communicate and to share. I think I'm trying to figure this out here. Okay. With an S, create a friendly tone. If an S does not feel that there is a friendly atmosphere, they have a tendency to shut down. So you have to set the stage. Don't be overly aggressive. Minimize confrontation. Give good definitions of what everyone's role is, and give them time to adjust. S's resist change. They like it the way it is, and so if you go up and start mucking around and reorganizing and things like that, they don't like that. So you have to give them time to change. then the C, provide the details. Validate the facts, be precise, be very specific, be patient, answer all the questions, because the way they're wired, they need information. They need to be able to look at the information and make a decision. So, when we look at building effective relationships, once again, everyone communicates, but few connect. As you start connecting, and even in this group, start looking for how different people are wired and maybe how to communicate with them better. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You're unique. You're different. That's good. But how you communicate with others, once you understand how someone else is wired, you can build a deeper relationship with them. You can understand what they're doing and what they're going through. So stop comparing, stop conforming. You know, Romans 12:2 says, "Be ye not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." So don't let the world force you into conformance. God wants you to be transformed by the renewing of our mind and building these relationships with each other. So, God gave you and me natural abilities and strengths. We went over some of these here. We are different. We have different gifts. According to the grace that each one of us has been given, Romans 12:6. You are an important part of the church. You're not the future of the church. You are the church today. And I know many of you who are working already in the nursery or in different areas on the praise team. That is important for you, but it's important for us too. We need you to be engaged and to be part of the church. So, which style is best? If you had to rank them, which one would you say would be best? What was that?
Trick question.
Your style.
Well,
Everybody.
I'd say DI is the best.
DI, okay. Your style. God's made you. You are special. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Philippians 2:3-5. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ. Where we live today, it's all about me. The word says it's all about others. And that is something, there's battles that I still wage with keeping my focus on others and not self. Because it's easy in this society to focus on me, what's right for me. But when I do that, it breaks down trust, it breaks down cohesiveness, it breaks down communications. We are to really have the mindset of Christ, which was on others. Okay, so looking at this pattern and looking at the next, there's certain things that we may not see the full picture, but we see patterns or we see situations. What are some of the things that you can come up with right now of how your mindset, your thought pattern needs to be adjusted? Is there anything that comes out? I mean, I think each of you has